Hey y'all, um, I got a new book I want to share with you guys. So it's backwards. It says Gods of the Bible. A new interpretation of the Bible reveals the oldest secrets in history. The author is Mauro Biglino. Biglino. Anyway, he's a Bible scholar. I'm not sure what his credentials are, but anyway, he breaks down um, the short, long story of the Bible. I found it very intriguing, and I stopped reading because I decided I wanted to share this book with you guys because I'm so bad with trying to explain things. So I'm going to have you read it with me. So here we go. I'm starting on page 23, the short, long story of the Bible. I have to take my glasses off to see. Theologians and believers regard the Bible as the revealed truth, a sacred text. They worship it and pray on it. They read it as if the words were coming directly from God's mouth. This attitude is found outside of the religious sector as well. Powerful politicians take the oath of office on the Bible before serving the country, and court eyewitnesses swear on it before giving a testimony that could save someone or get someone sentenced to death. The Bible is considered the epitome of unquestionable truth and reliability. This view, however, is in open contradiction with the very nature of the book, made of a fragile text resulting from endless passages, incessant manual copying, and transcriptions, censorship, and amendments that lasted more than 2,500 years. Its longevity adds to its authority and prestige, but if its age sounds like a long time, let us put things in perspective and compare the lifespan of this book with that of our planet and with that of human civilization as we know it. Since many believe the Bible is the Word of God, we need to measure its relevance against the universe's lifespan. To put things in perspective, suppose then planet Earth existed for a whole solar year, then the history of our civilization would only last 26 hundredths of a second. Compared to the universe's lifespan, the weight of human presence is practically non-existent. This example explains the difference between what we believe of ourselves as a species and what we are in the universe's grand scheme. Now that we know that humankind is almost nothing compared to the history of the planet Earth, and nothing at all compared to the universe, let us go back to the Bible, the book that supposedly contains the revealed truth about humankind and allegedly provides the foundation of some theological assumptions that should be, in the light of our discourse, wholly reconsidered. If humankind were created to serve and love God, then we wonder, what are these very few instances of human presence compared to the life of the universe? Why this much waste of time and space? Why not create human life from the beginning? Why billions of years, cosmic void, silence, and absence of any form of dialogue, prayer, offerings, and sacrifices? What will become of this love when humankind ceases to exist like many other living species have done before it? Will God remain again alone in the silent void of the cold sidereal space? Did God feel lonely in the first billion years of life of the universe? Did God only realize after 13.8 billion years of solitude that he could create some form of company for himself? These are all rhetorical questions because the study of the Old Testament reveals a different reality about the so-called God. However, let us thus first establish that, as mentioned above, the text of the Bible is fragile and uncertain. The Old Testament is a series of books that are among the most frequently written, rewritten, manipulated, altered, interpolated, modified, erased, corrected, eliminated, and then officially rediscovered in human history. When we speak of the Bible, we are thus not referring to a single coherent text with a specific purpose at the precise moment in the distant past. As said, the Bibles in our possessions are essentially written based on Stugit Bible, that is, the printed version of the Leningrad Masoretic Codex, prepared between the 6th and 9th centuries CE by the so-called Masoretes, guardians of the Masara, that is, the tradition of the school of Tiberius, who belonged to the family of Moshe ben Aaron ben Asher. The Bibles we have at home are derived from this version of the Old Testament, but what significant differences between the various denominations that follow this set of books? Catholics must believe that the Old Testament contains 46 divinely inspired books. For the Jewish canon, however, only 39 books are recognized as divinely inspired. Some books Christians accept as divinely inspired are not recognized in the Jewish canon. These are books of Tobias, Judith, Wisdom, Baruch, Sirach, the first and second book of Maccabees, and some passages of Esther and Daniel. The Reformed Church, i.e., Protestantism, essentially adheres to the Jewish canon. In contrast, Coptic Christians consider canonical and therefore containing inspired truths other books not included by the Catholics and Jews, such as the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jubilees. The Greek Orthodox Church does not use the Codex of Leningrad as a basis, but the text of the Septuagint, i.e., the Bible written in Greek in Egypt in the 3rd century BCE. Compared to the Masoretic version, the Bible in Greek has about 1,000 variations, some of which are considerable importance because they reveal significant differences in the meaning of the text. The variations are also sometimes able to show the correction and amendments, i.e., textual forgeries, made by the Masoretes. The Greek version formed the biblical basis for the church fathers in the first centuries after Christ until the Roman Church decided to use the Hebrew canon as its foundation. On the other hand, the rabbis rejected the Septuagint, arguing that the only books they believed to be consistent with the law written in Palestine in Hebrew before Ezra, 5th century BCE, were acceptable. But that is not all. In northern Palestine, in the territory of the Samaritans, the truth is not in the code written by the Masoretes, but the Samaritan Torah, Pentateuch. The Samaritan Torah has up to 2,000 variants compared to the Masoretic code. Moreover, in the Samaritan canon, only the first 6 books are recognized as true and divinely inspired. The Pentateuch and the book of Joshua. The Masoretes define themselves as keepers of the Masorah and tradition, while the Samaritans define themselves as keepers of the Torah, that is, the law. The Peshitta, the Syriac Bible, accepted by the Maronites, Nestorians, Jacobites, and Melkites, also differ from the Masoretic Bible. Part of Jewish culture believes that the Talmud contains more truths than the Bible itself. So before we're even close to the translation problems, we have not one Bible, but many Bibles. We have multiple possible Bibles, and most importantly, we find that all these Bibles, with their myriad variations, are declared indisputably true by those who live in the traditions that contain them. Great is the chaos under heaven. It is neither our task nor our intention to choose between these versions, knowing that in each case they are all books written by men who pursued concrete goals, often not consistent with the urgency to spread divine truth, but rather with the will to exercise power and domination over others. Contrary to the widespread belief that there is uncertainty about the authors of the Bible, we must know that there is not a single passage in the Old Testament in which we can say with absolute certainty who wrote it. The tradition assumes attributes that believers uncritically accept as certain. However, we know that the Bible was rewritten, and possibly largely rewritten from scratch during and after the Babylonian exile 5th century BCE. A concrete example will help us understand the actual situation. Even those who do not know the biblical text are familiar with the prophet Isaiah, the greatest of the Old Testament prophets who allegedly foretold the coming of the one who would later be Christian Messiah, Jesus. The book Isaiah consists of 66 chapters divided into several sections. Chapters 1 through 39 are attributed to Isaiah because, according to scholars, there are no serious reasons to deny authorship. We all understand very well that this statement means something quite different from saying that we know for sure that the author is a prophet. This unanimous attribution, however, falters as soon as we consider individual sections. The most significant difficulties concern the so-called apocalypse of Isaiah, chapters 20 through 27, which many scholars place during the time of exile, 5th centuries BCE, or the period after it, more than 2 centuries after the time in which the prophet lived. Further difficulties arise with chapters 13 through 23. Chapters 34 and 35 also offer significant challenges. Chapters 40 through 55 are attributed to the tarot Isaiah, an unknown author traditionally referred to as second Isaiah, who may have written them during the time of exile 2 centuries later. The last chapters from 56 to 66 are attributed to a likewise unknown author named Trito Isaiah, also known as third Isaiah, who probably lived a few decades after second Isaiah. As can be seen, the book of Isaiah is the work of, to be optimistic, at least 3 authors. 2 of them are entirely unknown and who must have been writing about over 3 centuries. But this is not the end of it. The Dead Sea Scrolls, the so-called Qumran text, have provided us with a different version of the book Isaiah, and this discovery only increases the uncertainty between the text found in these scrolls and the version of the Masoretes. There are more than 250 variants, including whole words appearing in one version but not in another. Let us detach ourselves for a moment from the biblical context and imagine that someone illustrates the composition of the Divine Comedy. An imaginary Dante scholar tells us that the first cantica, Inferno, is attributed to Dante Alighieri. because there is no reason to dispute this attribution. However, at least 20 cantos in this section were written about 2 centuries after Dante. Moreover, the same interpreter tells us that Purgatory was written by Datero Alighieri, who is said to have composed the canticle 200 years later. At the same time, Paradise is the work of an equally unknown Trito Alighieri, who is said to have written the text even later. Would we accept being told that Divine Comedy was written without a shadow of a doubt by Dante Alighieri, and that its undisputed credibility rests on this attribution? Another example will contribute to a better understanding. The contemplation of the first 5 books of the Old Testament, also known as the Torah or Pentateuch, is traditionally attributed to Moses. However, scholars know that these texts were written, or at least largely rewritten, during and after the Babylonian exile. In any case, the manuscripts in our possession do not predate the 2nd century BCE. So there is not a single book of the Old Testament of which we can say with certainty who wrote it and when. Each time that they were rewritten or copied under dictation, these texts change for various reasons. Also, we do not know how these books were read. We would like to emphasize that the last statement, we do not know how these books were read. This apparent absurdity arises from biblical texts being written only with consonants. The Masoretes inserted the vowels only around the 6th to 9th century CE, as we mentioned above. Scholars have yet to determine whether the vocalization of the Masoretes corresponds to the original pronunciation. We know very well that because of the unique structure of the Hebrew language, a different vocalization, even a different inflection in the pronunciation of the vowels, leads to significant variations in the meanings of individual terms. Even today, part of Jewish egesis still replaces the vowel sounds established by the Masoretes. In other words, thus obtaining different meanings of the words. So this is the situation with the books of the Old Testament. We still need to find out who wrote them, when and how were they read. However, we can be sure of one thing: the original text does not correspond with what we have today. Furthermore, all scholars agree that the original stories mainly contained in the book of Genesis were revised copies of older texts, in this case Sumerian, Akkadian, and Phoenician texts. Rabbis are well aware of this origin. Rabbi Robert Wexler, who led the American Jewish University for 25 years, is one of Judaism's most distinguished figures and scholars, has written that the stories of Genesis did not originate in Palestine but Mesopotamia. It goes beyond the limits of common sense that the Sumerian Akkadian narratives are defined as myths, legends, and fables, while the Bible, which in part is derived from them, represents the truth inspired of God? The originals are fairy tales, while the copy is the divine truth. A logical conclusion? Yet theologians claim to know and assert with indisputable certainty that God inspired these texts and the Bible contains the divine words. One almost wishes they were right, if only this would keep them from changing the text at will. However, the empowering possibilities that arose from being able to manipulate the divine words were only a spur to their zealous work. The fact that they considered the Bible a sacred text incredibly did not stop them from altering and interpreting it at their discretion, falsifying translations, or using rhetorical devices such as allegories and metaphors so that the text would reflect their conception of God. formed over millennia of theological elaboration. This conception of God, however, did not exist when the Bible was written. Wow. That was chapter 1. I find it fascinating. Join me for the third chapter, and that one will be pretending that the Bible is true. See you next time.